Interesting. And thinking.
So all of this should be done gradually over the 24 months and so constantly you're now typing these skills, thinking about like how you should be developing these skills, getting feedback.
It's a reflective process as well, which I think is also, I mean, if it's done the way it's designed to be done, it's actually very useful because it's I'd like every 6 months you're like, okay, what have I learned? What am I hoping to learn? Let me reflect on what I should have done better, what I need to improve on, etc. Which I think is very good.
Exactly. So that one is kind of over the 24 months. And then we have the other 6. So the other 6 are now both workshops, some with an exam component and then some without a workshop, but just an exam.
Got you.
So we go into, N31102, actuarial business and legal awareness, like how does actuarial science relate to law? So there is a workshop with quite a bit of pre-reading and lots of
Yes, I remember that.
Yes.
Very interesting, actually. You didn't have a major law emphasis in undergrad. So it's actually like, there's actually legal implications of the work we do.
Exactly. And also a full day workshop.
Yes.
Then the third is model documentation, analysis and reporting. So now that is the 8-hour exam I was talking about.
Yes.
Also a 1-day workshop.
Yes.
Also pre-reading, pre-assignments, having to build a model beforehand.
Yes.
This is where I kind of try and the point of it being that you can model something and then document and communicate how it works.
Yes. And what's interesting there is the emphasis is actually very much more on the documentation of the model than the model.
Yes.
And I think that's also interesting for me because that's why I think it's positioned later. Because you learn to model in your undergrad and it's like, okay, so what? Like document it. If someone was to take over your model from you, like let's say you left a job and you designed a model while you're at a job and someone has to take that over from you, are they able to follow your logic and are you able to communicate sort of like the assumptions and the shortfalls, etc.? As an aside, I remember when I did my model documentation workshop, I got the most terrible food poisoning that day. Like the most terrible food poisoning. So now whenever someone mentions it, I have like this PTSD because like I was so sick that night. Anyways, just as an aside.
And so number 4, we then move on to presentation skills and communication. So we see communication coming again in a workshop. So we've already had the N200 level, which is an actual subject.
Yes.
But now we also have another workshop. So workshop and some pre-reading on it.
Yes.
Then we go to 05, which is the general practice module.
Okay.
Seems super easy. You register for it. You just have to write like a virtual exam. It's multiple choice.
So you have to get like 75% or 80%?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's 20 marks. It's 20 minutes. So easy. But you get another like textbook essentially.
I know. And it's quite detailed actually.
And the questions are hard. Like multiple.
They are. Everyone's like, it's so easy. Multiple choice. I'm like,
And then we move on to 06, strategic thinking and interpersonal skills. Again, exam, workshop. So
I enjoyed that one a lot, actually. But I think I'm more inclined to enjoy the strategic thinking.
Yes. And also the interpersonal skills is great in terms of like, how do you relate to people in the workplace? Like lots of so your normative skills are the soft skills of like, how do you become a professional and expert?
Yeah.
07, professionalism for actuaries. So now after 07, you are now a master. So you need A311, A311. Which is the A300 series, the actuarial risk management, the beast, your normative skills, and all of your A100 levels.
To be in a master.
You can now call yourself an actuary, but you're not a fellow yet.
Yes.
Then we get on to the fellowship.
Yes.
So while this fellowship process is going, another year of work-based learning, 9 more fellowship-based skills, competencies that you have to develop and write on and get signed off.
Yeah.
And another 2 review questions, 500 to 1,000-word essays on this. And then also a professionalism workshop, 2-day workshop with pre-reading.
Yeah.
At the end of your F100s and F200s after you've written them all.
Yeah.
So now your F100s, we've chatted, your specialization subjects, your F200s, only one of them, super specialist.
Yeah, for me, that was healthcare.
Yes.
For you,
banking. Yeah.
Got
so I had a bit of a weird route. My F100s were actually health and investments.
Okay.
And then I did banking.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
Yes.
okay.
So kind of all over the place. I've really seen a lot of it.
Yeah.
And
Otherwise, I could see from your bio.
Exactly. And then at the end of this, easy peasy, you're now an actuary. So what we haven't spoken about is, so each of these components have like a certain amount of hours you need to get to. So the largest exam being A311, the beast, which is 500 hours of time, put it hours, recommended.
And that's not lecturing hours. That's literally you sitting with the notes. They're basically saying, we see candidates that spend at least this number of hours. In order to be successful.
Exactly. And so now if we just kind of think about total hours between exams, courses, so this is now very much a lower bound. But I mean, you're looking at, over this process, 3,000 hours.
Sure.
Which is a lot. That's a lot of time
to
contribute to anything. And not to discourage people, but just so you know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
And this doesn't include work and things. And now if you think about the broader scheme of things, so you have a 3-year degree, a recommended 1-year honors, 3 years of work experience at least.
Yeah.
So
and that's like record time.
Exactly. So that is, if you do everything perfectly, you can qualify in 6 to 7 years.
Yeah.
That is wild. Most, I don't know, actually still in their 40s writing exams.
Yeah, I remember when I went to my fellowship professionals course, I remember like the man who was facilitating said that the average age for an actuary like qualifying was like 28, 29.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably a little bit older now. But I think also something I just want to say to the audience, don't be discouraged by the complexity that we're unpacking. I mean, we are unpacking years of work in half an hour.
Exactly.
And I think what we're wanting to do, probably thinking, oh my goodness, there's so many subjects. And I'm going to unpack these in future episodes. This was just to sort of like a foreshadowing and to touch base. Like this is the roadmap and we'll unpack each of these subjects.
Exactly.
And we all did this over time. I mean, no subject here did we do in less than 6 months. You know, there was always 6 months dedicated to mastering this. But it's to say, like, this is the roadmap.
This is professionals that are there to help you as well.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
And reach out to actuaries, ask them about their experiences, Google things, use ChatGPT as like, find out about these things, be informed of like, what is next? What do I need to do? What is the plan? And it does seem a bit discouraging, so don't stress. I do have some motivation for the listeners.
Oh, please, give
why are we doing this? Why are we contributing 3,000 hours of our life at least over the next 7 years in order to qualify? So I have 3 points. So the first one is the fact that a actuarial degree will place you in a profession that you will generally always have work, but you will be prepared for anything the world can throw at you. And in a developing world where machines are taking jobs, you'll always be able to find a job if you are a very good actuary.
Yeah, and you constantly are upskilling. I think something that we didn't touch on is also, even once you qualify as an actuary, there's still that element of CPD, that continuous professional development, saying, well, the world is evolving and so must you. And that is a requirement in order to maintain your FASA designation. Exactly. And I think that's really important. It's not like you get this qualification and it's like, oh, I'm done.
Exactly.
There's that continuous learning. And I think if you are someone who enjoys learning and wants to constantly improve throughout your life, actuarial science is something you should really consider. Because, I mean, even since qualifying, I've learned so much.
Always.
So much. I'm constantly learning, especially when you teach. That's been a really interesting thing for me where I'm like, I understand this content. And then I'll lecture it and I'll be like, oh, I just understood something else, you know? Yeah. I remember I lectured something and a student was like, that's such a good explanation. And I was like, I know, right? I understood it better now.
And you ask a question, you're like, I have never thought of it that way.
I know. It's incredible. It's incredible. It's honestly, teaching is the best way to understand things better.
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah.
It's incredible.
So number one, your profession will always be relevant. Number two, you will be part of a very small set of a skill and a profession that is in short supply.
Yeah.
So to put it in context, there are currently around 1,700 qualified actuaries, FASs in South Africa, whereas CAs, there are 52,000 qualified CAs. So that is like 30 times the amount.
Sure. Yeah, what is it, like 127 or 28?
Yeah.
When that fails me. Yeah.
And then if we talk about like employment rates amongst FASs versus CAs, so some stats I found online, there's a 98% employment rate around FASs.
Cheaper.
And a 94% employment rate around CAs. So professions are well employed in our country. If you want a job, you can find a job.
Yeah.
So number two, you will always be relevant. So number two, you form part of a small set of people, and you will always have a job overseas. So once you become FASA designated in South Africa, we have mutual recognition agreements, which means that you basically have a standard, they will recognize your qualification.
Yeah.
It's also one of the few professions that does that. If you're a doctor, there's
elements of exams that you need to do should you
want to in countries.
Yeah.
So if you're a FASA in South Africa, you are recognized as an actuary in the UK, Australia, Ireland, Germany, Netherlands, 35 other European countries, and Canada.
Sure.
And the role that you hold is people know the title actuary.
And they do.
And then finally, because it's always asked by students, how much am I going to get paid? I'm not going to give numbers and things.
Yeah, because that also, I think, it depends on also inflation, the type of actuary that you are.
How many exams?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. There's so much of a spectrum there.
Exactly. And also, and money, it's always a practical consideration, but shouldn't be the only consideration.
Yeah, it shouldn't be your primary consideration.
Exactly. It's going to be very difficult to get through this process if that's the only thing driving you.
Agreed.
Because there's a lot of time spent not earning or having to study that like it does not connect to. But to put into context, so in South Africa, minimum wage currently is 25 Rand and 42 cents an hour. So if you work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 4 weeks a month for 12 months, you're earning about 48,800 Rand a year.
Sure.
An accountant in South Africa will earn 6.6 times that minimum wage over an annual salary. An actuary in South Africa will earn almost 14 times the minimum wage. And you will be put your base salary. So these are numbers from like Indeed.com, just looking for an actuary or accountant.
Just to give a bit of like a reference point.
So as an actuary baseline salary starting, you will be just under the top 10% of income earners in our country, which means that your like jump in salary is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It is a very highly sought after and demanded career, and hence it comes with it. So
yeah, and I think that's also something, maybe a good thing to almost end the podcast on, and in the sense that saying, you know, it is a difficult road. It is a difficult road, but you're developing a rare skill. So it should make sense that it is difficult, because it wouldn't be a rare skill if it wasn't difficult, then anyone would do it, you know. And I think for me, something we discussed when we had coffee before this, we said, you know, we both are passionate about things outside of actuarial science, and we want to apply the thinking that we developed becoming actuaries to those spaces. And I would become an actuary again, even though it was so hard. And I mean, I failed a couple of my exemption papers and had to rewrite them. But the thinking that I developed from being an actuary is what I would never forfeit. Yes. So as much as, yes, I'm a healthcare actuary, it's a thinking that when I look at a problem and I break it down, etc., that's what is the most valuable asset. Yes. And I think that's what, when you go in, that's the thing that you should aim for. Yes. That ability to develop your brain in such a way and use your brain in such a way that it shapes your whole life. Yes. And then you can also shape the lives of the people around you. Yes. You know, which for me is incredibly motivating. And I know, given our conversation, it's for you as well. Yeah. And I hope that that's encouragement to our listeners as well.
Exactly. And I mean, the last thing I want to say is just, you know, the people listening to this podcast are probably on their way to becoming an actuary or thinking about it. So probably are very bright, of like, you have a great mind, and I encourage you to go and use this like little actuarial toolbox to go and fix the problems in our country. Yeah. You're a South African actuary, like, and you're in a program, an actuarial program, like you're probably one of the top young minds of our country. Yeah. Go and use these skills to like help others. Yeah. Go and give back.
Yeah. Very much so. Very much so. But I cannot thank you enough for being on the podcast. I think, it's strange when I started this project, I wanted to bring out personalities, and you're such a fantastic personality to have on, especially early on in the podcast, because I think, you know, you're a young actuary, you're vibrant, you've also been in different spaces, and you got all your exemptions first time, and you're like, okay, I want to use these things, but also it's a bit difficult. Even though you got all of them the first time, it was hard, right? And I just really want that to be of encouragement to our listeners. So thank you for your time.
Of course.
And thank you for your friendship. I can't wait to get to know you better. But thank you so much. It's overall. And to our audience, thank you for listening, and see you in our next episode. Goodbye. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a review on your preferred streaming platform. If you'd like to interact with us more, or add questions or topics to our pool of ideas, please follow our Instagram page at ASforActuary, or email us on asforactuary@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. Take care.